So it's Storyman Mark, and here I am at Emily Oaks Nature Center, 4650 Brummel Street in Skokie. And it is story time. To begin today's program, I'm going to let Emily Oaks Nature Center speak for herself.
It's time now for joke time on Storytime. Go ahead. Make me laugh.
I was looking at the May calendar and I discovered that on May 3rd it was Lumpy Rug Day. Who knew? And May 7th was National Nurses Day. So I hope you gave a social distancing hug to a nurse that you care about. But I did have a question for a nurse friend of mine. I asked her, what is the difference between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer? To which she replied, the taste.
Yuck.
May 9th, National Lost Sock Memorial Day. Well, it makes sense because one sock is always right, and so the other one left. May 13th, National Frog Jumping Day, which begs the question, how do frogs die? They commit suicide. May 16th is National Love a Tree Day. So no joke here, but give those trees around you a big hug and show them some love. And finally, May 25th is National Tap Dancing Day, which begs another question. What kind of dancer is a fuzzy dog? A contemporary dancer.
That is all the time we have for joke time on Storytime.
I'm Storyman Mark, and I'm at the Emily Oaks Nature Center in Skokie, Illinois. The Emily Oaks Nature Center is about 13 acres, and it's an oak savanna. And if you think about where North Park Village Nature Center is and where we are here, the distance between the two used to be an oak savanna. And so if you think of the history of Illinois, the oak savanna went from here at Emily Oaks in Skokie all the way out to the lake. But now, of course, there's just these little patches of oak savannas that exist and are being reclaimed. This month is Asian Pacific Month. And so we're celebrating those cultures from Japan and China and all the Pacific Islands and all the other places that make up the Pacific area. So I'd like to tell a story today that comes from Japan and is called The Boy Who Drew Cats. A long time ago, there was a family. They weren't poor, but they weren't wealthy, and they just had enough money really to provide for the kids. They always had food, and they always had a roof over their head. And the father was a farmer, and his oldest boy helped him. He was a strong lad. And the two daughters, well, they had started helping their mother immediately when they were old enough to walk almost. But their fourth son, the youngest, was, well, short and kind of weak, and they wondered if he'd ever amount to much, and they were a little worried about him because he didn't seem to have the ability to do strong labor, which is what the farming required. So the parents were a little worried about him, and they loved him very much, and they came up with the idea to go to a nearby monk and see if the boy couldn't become an acolyte and study, because he maybe could be a scholar like the monks were. And so they went and they took the boy to the temple, and sure enough, the monk and the boy had a wonderful conversation, and because of the boy's wise answers, the monk decided to take him in. And well, the boy was very eager to learn, and he did. He applied himself, and he was scholarly. He learned everything that he possibly could. He just drank it in, sucked it in like a sponge. And the one thing they discovered was he had the ability to draw, of calligraphy, of making wonderful letters and symbols. And if you've ever seen Japanese calligraphy, you should look at it sometime. It's flowing and just a joy to look at. And so they put him to work copying some of their ancient manuscripts. And this was fine, except the boy had one glaring issue. He loved to draw cats. It was almost like he couldn't control himself. He was obsessed with it. It's every time he saw a little bit of space, like in the margins of one of these books he was copying, these manuscripts, he would draw a little bitty cat and then turn a few pages and they'd find another little itty bitty cat. And then there were places like on the columns that were holding the roof up. They started to find cats drawn on the columns, cats drawn on the paper walls between the rooms. Finally, the monk said, look, you need to stop drawing cats because they're everywhere. And while I understand your enthusiasm and the cats look wonderful, but if you really want to become an acolyte and you want to study and become a monk, you need to learn to control yourself. The boy said, all right, I will. And he made it a few days without drawing any cats. And the monks thought, well, maybe he got the message. And so they heard that the abbot and priest from a big, well-known monastery was coming to visit them. And they wanted to impress him, so they decided to have the boy, to honor the boy because of his calligraphic skills. They decided to honor the boy too because he had been good for a couple of days. They decided to honor him to copy a manuscript that they would present to this priest at a special event. Oh, the boy said, okay, yes, I can do this. And so the monk said, remember, no cats. The boy said, I will try. And of course, try is one of those words, right? Try gives you a little leeway. Try means you're trying, but it's not the same as saying, I won't do it. And the boy did try. He actually got several pages into the manuscript when the first cat came out. It almost came out without the boy even knowing it. And then the next page, instead of doing any of the manuscript, he just drew a cat. And then another cat. Oh, and another cat. Oh, there were cats that were scratching. There were cats that were... Oh, the cats were doing everything. Well, you think what cats can do, and that's what the boy was drawing these cats doing. Well, by the time the monk came back, the boy had used up all of the paper that they were using for the manuscript on cats. Oh, the monk wanted to pull his hair out, except he was a monk and had no hair. He looked at the boy and he said, I'm sorry, son, but you have to go. I have to send you away. I have to send you back to your parents because you do not have the temperament to be a monk. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but you can't be a monk. An artist, maybe. You have the temperament to be an artist, but not a monk. So please, gather your belongings. We'll give you a little food to take with you, and we'll send you on your way. And so the boy did. He right then and there, he put his brushes down and he gathered his belongings. He had a little valise that he put over his shoulder, and the monk said, boy, I have this little bit of advice for you, and that is avoid large spaces. Seek tiny places. Well, the boy had no idea what that meant, but with that, the two parted company. The boy disappointed, the monk disappointed, but the monk wishing the boy no ill will. And so off the boy went. Now, he did not want to go home. He wanted to figure out what else he could do so that he could not disappoint his parents, especially his father. And as he walked just a little bit down the road, he began to scheme and try to figure out something that he could do. And he remembered in the nearby village, it was about 12 miles away, there was another temple. It was a bigger temple, and he thought maybe he could become an acolyte there. He already understood what an acolyte needed to do, and so he decided to do that. And so he set his jaw and his path, and he walked toward that temple. Now, before he got there, though, the sun started to set, and there was a chill in the air because the seasons were changing, and the boy found another temple. It was a smaller temple, and it looked like it hadn't been used. It was dusty, and there was leaves around, but he noticed that there were huge pieces of paper hanging, just waiting. And the walls of paper, pristine. Immediately he looked around and he found some ink that he could use and some brushes. And he lit a couple of candles and he went to work. It became a meditation to him. He lost consciousness almost. He was painting, small cats, big cats, again, doing everything you think a cat could do, and finally, exhausted, and all the paper having been used up, he collapsed. And the moon was setting, and he thought, I should sleep now, for sunrise is not that far away. And he went to lie down when he remembered the words of the monk. Avoid large spaces, seek small places. And so he said, okay, and now there was a cabinet nearby, and the cabinet had a sliding door, and there was just enough room for him to slide that door open and climb inside and close the door behind him. Well, it wasn't long before he fell asleep, but he was awoken by a strange snuffling sound. And he could feel the scraping of claws on the temple floor and the snuffling getting closer and closer to the cabinet. And then whatever it was outside. The boy made himself into the tiniest ball, and he tried to make himself disappear. And the cabinet door started to slide open. When there was chaos, instant chaos. There was screeching and screaming and crying out. And the boy made himself smaller still. He didn't know what was going on outside, until finally there was dead silence. And the boy listened. Nothing. He was afraid to go out. He thought he would just stay where he was until the sun rose. And so he went back again, closing his eyes and making himself tight as a little ball. And sure enough, he fell asleep in no time at all. And in the morning, the sound of the birds and a rooster crowing woke him up. He slowly opened the cabinet door and crawled out. And what did he see? He saw that had been a demon rat, a huge, fantastical creature with long claws. It was lying in its own pool of blood. But what had happened? What had saved him? And then he noticed the cats. In each drawing of each cat, there was one drop of blood at the tip of a claw, at the tip of a mouth, at the tip of a tail. Every single cat. Well, the boy fell on his knees and he thanked the cats and he bowed before them. And he decided he would not be a monk either. And he went into the nearby village and he begged for some money, and he got some money, and he began drawing. Not cats, but other things. And people liked what he drew, and they started to pay for his drawings. And after years and years, he was a well-known artist and wealthy, and he had his own place to live. And he actually never really drew cats again, for it had seemed they had served his purpose. he did from time to time go back to that temple. And while the cats were gone now, the paper was gone, it had decayed, he remembered those cats, and he would always bow and say a prayer of thank you. And that's the story from Japan of a boy who drew cats. I hope you've enjoyed our nature walk at the Emily Oaks Nature Center in Skokie, Illinois. I'm Storyman Mark. Thanks for joining us, and join us next time for a nature walk in the Grove of Glenview and a story trip to Malaysia. Until then, may all your stories be happy ones.